Welcome to Scaling Impact, where we decode how entrepreneurs are harnessing the power of the UN Sustainable Development Goals to create remarkable and impactful businesses that drive transformation on a global and local human scale. We explore how sustainability is elevating our human consciousness and catalyzing us to create within constraints. We decipher why now is the biggest entrepreneurial opportunity since the dawn of industrialization and what leaders and entrepreneurs can do to harness the winds of change. I'm Anders Sorma-Nielsen, global futurist, EO Sydney Impact Champion and father, and your co-host with Lisa Andrews for Scaling Impact. Welcome to EO Sydney's global podcast, Scaling Impact. On today's episode, we are joined by a thought leader in sustainability, Angelica Nohra. And I'm super excited to tune into her passions as we unearth her big purpose in business and how Angelica is leveraging the UN SDGs, and in particular, life on land, Sustainable Development Goal number 15, to scale her business and impact. So, Angelica, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Anders. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm just going to give our listeners and viewers a little bit of a background on you. You and I have sat down, usually sort of a glass of wine in hand, which is always fascinating because you know about the terroir, as the French would say. The provenance and all the mysticism that make a great bottle of wine. And you are a wine importer, you're a wine distributor, wine list consultant. You're the co-founder of the Blue Door Surry Hills restaurant, a sustainable restaurant. You're the founder and director of Direct Wine Cellars and also the MD of sales at Star Beverages Australia. So everything good that we like to consume, I feel like, you got a little finger in the pie somewhere, or certainly, an impact on that sort of farm to table conversation and story and all the rest. But today we're here to talk about life on land and maybe in particular how food and wine and your restaurants and your businesses play a key role as we shift from more of a linear economy of take, make and waste to a more circular regenerative economy where farmers are starting to make a real impact on how the world is regenerating as well. So that's a little bit of an entree or intro to Angelica Nohra. I'm curious, how did you start out in this space, and what's the sustainability passion?
Yeah, so okay, to be honest, if we go back, say 4 or 5 years, I didn't really understand what sustainability meant. I was a Miss Keep Cup and using my own little cutlery and stuff like that, and I was trying not to leave rubbish and cleaning the ocean. Like that's kind of like where it all started. I was like, one of those people, but I didn't really understand what the impact of my food or my wine consumption was actually doing to the land at the time. And then a couple of years ago, I met Dylan and we were just chatting and we were talking about food, and I was talking about how I was a carnivore at that point and loved eating beef. And he just questioned me. He's like, "What kind of beef do you eat?" And I was like, I really love grain fed. And he was like, "Oh man, that's so bad." And I was like, "What do you mean that's bad?" He's like, "No, you shouldn't be eating grain fed." And I was like, "Why? That's juiciest, like Wagyu and stuff." He's like, and then he started educating. I guess he started just going into the difference between grain fed and grass fed. And he said to me, "Ange, if cows are meant to only eat grass, the minute we feed them grain, they get gas in their stomach. That gas turns into methane in our environment, and we wonder why we have climate change." And I was like, "Oh." He's like, "But if we just stuck to grass-fed, while it's not the perfect option, stick to grass-fed, the cows have diversity of plant life around them. They're eating what they're meant to eat, so their system's working better, and you actually growing more diversity of plants on the farm that they're living in, so it's carbon neutral almost, right?" I was like, "Wow, tell me more." He's like, "Look, that's all I'm going to leave you with. You go and do your own research." So then I started reading books about, then I was like almost like I'm going full vegan at that point. And then I started learning about the issues of soy and corn and anything that's like monoculture farming. I've learned about how that it can really start destroying it starts emitting carbon rather than sequestering carbon. So this anything that starts as like a monoculture, so soy, corn, all those kind of things, not actually that good for the environment, even though we think we're doing a good thing. And I just started doing all this research, and I was like, holy crap! Like people need to know about this. Read a book called Defending Beef. I read, The Omnivore's Dilemma, and all these books that made me go like, wow, like everything I thought I knew, I do not know. So I was like, how do we get more people to know about this? And Dylan was a chef at the time, and he goes, no one really cares, and I want to work with this stuff. Like I want to work with grass-fed, pasture-raised. I don't want to work, with boxed meat anymore. I want to know where the food comes from. I want transparency for diners. No one cares, so I'm going to give up cooking. So I said, no, you can't do that. You cannot give up cooking. I'm really keen to go into a restaurant with you. So we started a restaurant, and the entire ethos behind the Blue Door is complete transparency on where all the food comes from. Everything's super local so that there's no air miles, I guess, of the food. We only buy whole animals as a method of sustainability because, we always say, like, if every restaurant in Sydney has ribeye on the menu, where's the rest of the cow, right? And if we are emitting all this carbon in these grain lots, where's the rest of the cow? So that was always the question. So we use whole cows, we use whole pigs, we use whole ducks, we use...
I feel like that would be that would be a fantastic like bumper sticker statement on your car, like where is the rest of the cow?
Where's the rest? It's true. It's a really true point. And I started like from being like picky and choosy eater to now eating everything in honor of that animal, because in the day, it's all about sustainability, because that animal has gone through that life and grown for us. We should eat the whole thing. We shouldn't just go, I don't eat duck, or I don't eat pork. I don't eat. It's like, just eat everything because it's given to us. So that's what our ethos is. So we do 7-course tasting menu based on whatever we have that week. So whatever the farmers are growing, whatever the vegetables we get, like we just make a menu every week from that. And then everyone we work with is regenerative, which is where you're putting, more nutrients into the soil than you're taking. If we think about, I guess this is like a lot of people ask me like what regenerative farming means. It's kind of like if you think about your stomach, how everyone talks about how your gut has all this flora and bacteria and all these microbial activity, I guess. The soil has exactly the same thing. So if you're doing non-till farming or regenerative farming, you're not disturbing the microbiome of the soil. You end up with all these beautiful nutrients in that soil. The plants feed off that, and yes, they have to work harder because they're not lazy. They're not being sprayed with herbicide or pesticide. They have to build their own immunity system, similar to us. If we take a lot of drugs like cold and flu drugs or whatever, compared to feeding ourselves nourishing food or whatever, these plants end up with so many nutrients that we then intake, like ingest, as well as you don't need any herbicide or pesticide, so you're not eating any chemicals. And there's so many studies around the world, particularly like chefs doing this, where they've found out that literally a carrot that tastes like a carrot, I know this sounds ridiculous, but a carrot that tastes like a carrot has more nutrients than like a bag of carrots at Coles. So you're better off eating 1 or 2 carrots compared to having 1 kilo of carrots, but make sure that they're full of nutrients from regenerative vegetable farmers kind of thing. So that's the whole ethos of what we're doing, and it's become my absolute obsession. I feel like I always say the 12 years of importing and distributing wine from all over the world, this is now my redemption for all that I've done. It's just been a really fun journey. It's, fun to explain. And the shock when people hear that only 3% of all pork in Australia ever sees grass, it's shocking. We don't think about that when we're buying our ham at Coles, So yeah, sorry, that was a bit of a whirlwind, that answer. Sorry.
No, well, I asked you about passions and where this all came from. So it's nice to explore the background story there. So only 3% of pork see any grass in Australia. Any other statistics or numbers that our fellow entrepreneurs should be tuning into when it comes to knowing about, the impact of our, food choices?
Well, that's a big one for me. So I always say, if you are at Woolies and you have no choice, try and get at least, the Australian ham from the deli, even though they're mainly grown in these big like feedlot building kind of things. And I found out the other day that in Melbourne, in Victoria, the law is that you can't even do free range. You can't even kill like processed free range pigs, which is a really weird situation. So we're much luckier here in New South Wales that we can get free range. Yeah. I think a big thing is chicken. When people realize how, people don't realize that there can be ethical chicken. So if you ever see, oh, that's actually a good one. So always look for pasture raised chicken. That's one thing. But the word free range, and I mean, we always try and do the right thing, but free range means they live in a shed. They just have a door, right? They can get out whenever they wish. So always look for pasture raised or pasture finished, or always look at that word, because that's beyond free range. Yeah. Like I always try and stay away from the word free range, because it's such a, it's just such a false term. And I know that most humans want to do the right thing. We want to buy ethical eggs and ethical chicken and all that. But when we get sold that free range is the right thing, we're actually not looking deeper into it. So that's probably the other thing I'd say to look out for. Yeah. Oh, and one more thing about wine. Sorry. There's a few things. Anders, you've got me on a roll, bro. You can't do that. So wine, organic, is a massive thing, because you have to remember, like, organic is just this overarching term for like, oh, we're not using many chemicals, but it doesn't actually mean they're not using chemicals. They'll still spray coppers and sulfates and stuff on the vegetables, on the grapes and all that kind of thing. So the word organic doesn't normally mean too much either. Look for chemical free is probably the best thing to look for, I guess, in food.
Wow. So when I buy my like organic wines, you're telling me it's not organic?
It's organically, like they're doing as much as they can, but organic has become quite a big, broad statement these days. So most of the people who are doing like proper biodynamics organics, they don't even say it on the label. You just have to do your own little research. But that's why I stick to mainly like natural wines, as weird as it is, because they're normally proper organic, like actually chemical free, letting the grapes grow as they wish. They're doing regenerative biodynamic farming in the vineyard as well. So yeah, sorry, I feel like it's a downer. I feel like I don't want to be a downer today.
So how do we get beyond this sort of, greenwashing or whatever we want to call it to, a place where, people don't just sort of do the moral licensing move of going, oh, well, I bought the free range stuff, like tick that box and, that's, better for the planet and better for the chickens and better for the family. Like how can we, structurally or, even in the awareness amongst chefs or the consumer move to a space where, this is not just a matter of greenwashing, but it's, it's true, authentic sort of, provenance and animal husbandry, and that is ethical and looking after our lands in a regenerative fashion. Have you got any thoughts on that?
God, and it's such a great question, because I've been trying to work out the answer to this myself. And because a lot of people, like, as I said, a lot of people think that, like, they just hear free range and they think that that's the right thing. And I don't think anyone looks beyond that. I think the question is, how do we get more people to ask questions? How do we get people, like, when they get a plate at a restaurant, ask, like, where is that duck from? Where is that beef from? And then hopefully they go and do their own research, and they choose with their money. They make different, like, we can make a difference. Like, if less people are eating, I shouldn't say this, particular Wagyu from very rich people that are all feedlot, then there won't be a demand for that, which means hopefully that the regenerative farmer who's doing the right thing has more requests for his or her product. So that's, yeah. The only thing I can really think of is, like, we as humans need to ask more questions and ask for more transparency, and not just sit there and go, oh yeah, cool, I'll eat that beef. It doesn't tell me, I don't know who the farmer is, I don't know where it came from, but I'll eat it anyway. I always get in trouble when I go to restaurants from friends because I'll be like, oh, who caught your fish? Who caught, like, where's that scallop from? Where's the prawns from? And people was like, who cares? Just leave it alone. I'm like, no, you have to ask, because it will start, if people go, okay, people keep asking, it makes the chefs go, oh, we better change. We have to have someone we're proud to promote, So yeah, that's honestly, and as the only thing I can think of. I am very much up for suggestions on how we can fix this, because it's quite a frustrating thing for us, especially when we dine out.
Well, I think sometimes just the importance of storytelling and debunking myths and re-educating people, how they can make a switch is important. I even, if I went to your website or, another sustainability advocate, and they're like, just go, don't do this, buy this instead. Just go, I don't know. I go ditch the salmon that's been in aquaculture in this area, but buy the, Akuna sustainable cod from here instead. And luckily, you might happen to have that on your menu. Or, ditch grain-fed, go grass-fed. Are there some of those switches that you could just go, hey, you don't know how much damage you're doing by, ordering the Wagyu. Go for this option instead. Are there some easy switches like that you could think of that would be helpful?
Stick local. Local's probably the best switch because we have the highest practices here, in terms of ethical and sustainable farming practices. I would choose Australia over New Zealand even, particularly for seafood, even though we're not talking about the sea right now, but seafood, I'll always go local. Any kind of time you can eat animals processed here in Australia, processed in Australia, not flown in, things from as local as you can get it. I always think about it like the French principle. In France, provenance is so important. If you go to Lyon, you're not eating food from the north of France. You're not. If you go to Italy, you're not eating food from Tuscany if you're from Veneto. They eat what is local, and I think if that's a huge difference that we can make here in New South Wales, particularly, is it's ask if it's local. That could be a huge switch straight away. Eggs, ask if they're local. And are they pasture raised? Pasture raised means so much more. So, yeah.
So give us your five tips here. So we've got pasture raised, local.
Pasture raised, local. Pasture raised, local, chemical free. Look for the words chemical free. The other thing is eat less but eat better. I know people say it's too expensive to eat organic or eat pasture-fed food, but there's so much more nutrients in it. Just eat less of it. So buy one chicken. You can have the legs one day in a wrap, the breasts one day in a stir fry, the bones one day in a soup. You can actually feed yourself for 5 days if you really got creative with one chicken. It might cost you $70, but you get creative, right? So eat less, eat better. And what's my final one, Anders?
You can have more, but
line caught fish every day. Don't eat prawns. Prawns are bad for you. Bad for the environment. Prawn. I always say the prawn and the scallop industry in the north of Queensland are constantly asking to be regulated because they're this is insane, what we're doing here. You need to regulate us so we're not producing as much as we are. So if the actual industry is saying, please stop us, I just think stop eating it. But yeah, that's just my little rant. It's crazy. It really is crazy. And also just be conscious of soy. People think that soy is a great alternative, and people think about, these soy, meat, the plant-based alternatives, right? Plant-based alternatives. I'm my idea of a plant-based alternative to meat is mushroom, it's eggplant, it's eating vegetables. Soy, once you plant soy, it sucks so much of the nutrients and it actually chokes all the other life form around it. So you get this monoculture farming. So everyone thinks, I eat soy, it's so much better for the environment. It's killing us because we need grass. The grass sequesters more carbon than any trees or anything, right? So the beauty of having pasture-raised chickens is if you actually go to a pasture-raised chicken farm, you see where the chickens have been, and they peck and they poo and they peck and they poo, and then they get moved. And you see how beautifully long the grass gets, and like how beautiful the pasture regenerates after you just have chickens moving through it, right? So we need more we need more grass. And when you're planting soy and everything, it's sucking all that away. And then people say, oh, we're going to go plant a tree. And then you end up with these big forests of the same damn tree, like oak trees, which only brings in one form of bird life, right? We need diversity of plant life and diversity of birds and bees and all the other fauna, I guess you could say. But when we're only planting one style of tree or one of corn, like one pot of corn or one pot of soy, we're not actually helping the environment in any way, shape, or form. So we need grass, like we need just more grass. So then they got, we can get these Impossible burgers and stuff. I'm like, to build, or lab-grown meat, to build the factories, to feed us, all this lab-grown meat is going to take up football stadiums of land. It is so counterintuitive. Just put more grass, feed more animals on land. We have to just go back to old school agriculture, which does mean, yes, we're going to have to eat less meat in the future and more vegetables, more diversity of vegetables, but we eat better and we help our planet that way. So that's something for people to really consider when they're eating like all these plant-based kind of alternatives. Eat mushrooms. They're great. Mushrooms are fantastic. Just don't, lab grown and soy based, a bit weird.
I love a good mushroom. I'm Swedish.
Yes, the Swedes know what they're doing. They know what they're doing in terms of this stuff.
We go foraging in the forest for amazing mushrooms like chanterelles and stuff like that. I wish they were easier to find in Australia. But the other thing here is, what are the stories from the land? So have you got some heartening stories of some of the local farms you work with, anything that's happening there? What have those encounters been like? And are there some stories off the farm that you can share with our listeners?
We've got some beautiful, we've got so many beautiful farmers. Like, they are really special. Like, for instance, there's like Justin down at Duckfoot. He's in Colo Vale, but he's just got this passion. Him and Sam from Maple Tree Farms down in Colo Vale, they have this thing where they just, say someone has a block of land and they're not using it, right? They go and lease that land from the people and they create vegetable beds, right? Vegetable beds. So then they're building all these vegetables, constantly rotating them in a regenerative matter, and then they go and sell those vegetables, and they build them so that other people can come in and start making their own like vegetable boxes and stuff. So it like helps the community, it helps all these people that own all this land to actually do something with it, do something positive with their land. So that's been really special. Then you have like Sasha at Canuka Creek up in Papenbarra, Port Macquarie. I feel bad because they've just shut their chicken operation. But when we went and visited them, it's just this family, and they bought a farm. The husband and wife bought a farm because they just wanted their kids growing up knowing where their food came from. So the first thing they did to regenerate was put chickens on it, and chickens run around. It's so cute that the kids would fall in love with the chickens, and then they'd have like the chicken coop just for the pet chickens while like the rest of the chickens are running around, and they're the ones to get processed. But it was the tastiest chicken I don't think I've ever tasted chicken like that in my life. But again, they're pasture raised, they're fighting with the whole free range thing, and they couldn't keep it going for now. I'm hoping that they come back, and they're looking at like how they can turn their farm into a vegetable farm. So it's really good to see that. You've also got Musset Holdings down in Colo Vale as well. Like Southern Highlands is a big area for us. He started as a pasture-raised chicken egg farmer. The grass was doing so well that it was just like flying. So a mate came around and said, oh, why don't you start making hay? So he started like cutting the grass, making hay. Then from the hay barrel, like hay bundles, started growing mushrooms. So putting the mushroom spurs and letting that go. Ended up getting like all these like mushroom or hay mites, which wasn't good. So got rid of that situation. And actually has like a mushroom. Now he plants mushrooms on the farm. So he's done like that hydroponic mushroom system. And then he takes like, once the bags are all done, he'll take them down to the river and he'll try and get like a third or fourth spur out of it, but like all the spurs that kind of drop on the floor and helps regenerate the soil around the lake and stuff like that. So, and then he's putting mussels in his lake. Like this guy is like, I just see this cycle of regeneration where they just constantly thinking of like, what else can we do? So he's pretty sensational as well. I mean, we've got some great farmers. You've got Gundui Organics, pasture-raised Wagyu, who's 100% pasture-raised Wagyu up in Leadville near Mudgee. So again, like they're just awesome people. Just the cows grow slowly. They're super lean compared to the Wagyu we expect to eat, I guess. But, you know, full of omega-3s, omega-6s, vitamin A, vitamin E, exactly what we need to be eating, not like the grain-fed. So, yeah, we got some people doing some cool stuff, really cool stuff.
There is such a thing as good Wagyu.
Oh, yeah.
Not just good for the tongue and the, you know.
Yeah, but I will warn people, like I say to people when they come and eat it, because we buy the whole cow. So there are parts, you're going to eat the skirt, you're going to eat the flank, you're going to eat the second and third cuts when you come to our restaurant, right? So we say to people, it's going to be chewy, like not chewy, but it's going to have a bite to it. So we're still going to serve it because we want to show that, you know, this is what the animal tastes like. You can't just pick and choose, I only have ribeye, I fillet. Like there are other parts of that cow. So you know, great beef, like really, really good beef. Tastes like beef, which is good. That's what I say. Like it doesn't taste like water, like a lot of Wagyu does. Yeah, but no, there is some good stuff.
How do we pair this with wines? Because this is always, you know, there's always a little bit of a bugbear of mine because I'm like, oh, you know, like this is where the sustainability sort of clashes potentially with, you know, the idea of provenance and provenance marketing. So, you know, I know most of the, you know, fancy celebratory occasions, you know, people might go, oh, well, I'll spend a little bit extra and get the champagne, but that's only from the Champagne region in France. And that automatically means that it's been imported and, you know, got lots of food miles or wine miles there. Because then, you know, if you just, you know, if you went for the local alternative here because of, you know, provenance laws and everything else, you just, you know. So, like, is there a way to get around this, or how do we feel less bad about wanting to occasionally drink champagne, but then knowing that it comes with, you know, guilt?
Well, look, it's okay. So have you ever flown from like, I don't know, Sydney to London before? Right? You fly from Sydney to London. I'm sure everyone's done that once, or yeah, you put it this way, for that one trip that you took on that plane, you'd need to drink 10,000 bottles of champagne to really make the same impact. So I don't think like we need to feel that bad about having that one bottle of champagne. I think pay for it. Like these people who are paying $50 for Piper Heidsieck and thinking that that's an okay thing, considering there's taxes, the miles to get here, the 3 years to make it and all that, you know, pay for champagne. That's what I always say, like pay for good champagne. It's worth it. I guess with wine, it's look out for bottles that are lighter. So the lighter bottles, don't go with the thick, heavy set bottle because that's where the impact's being made. Like, you know, it's just heavy, so it's costing more money to make and to bring over here and all that kind of thing. Again, you can stick to local. I import wine. I want people to drink champagne and French wine and all that. And it's good to be conscious of those wines because then you can see where our industry, the Australian market, is going as well. You can see how we're progressing as well compared to the rest of the world. I mainly drink local now, but I stick mainly to like biodynamic, organic, and natural winemaking. So those three kind of buzzwords, but making sure they're real. And it's, if you ever visit a wine region, just have a look at the vines. Just have a look underneath the vines, okay? If those vines are flat, if that soil is flat and it's moss growing on there and it's just, there's no life under those vines except for the grapes like growing, there's just no life underneath, you can tell that there are a lot of chemicals going into that bottle of wine that you're about to drink. If you go to a wine region and you see the soil is dug up and it's just rich and you can just see like, little animals running through the vineyard and all that kind of thing. I wish I could show you a photo of what that looks like, but it's like you just see all the soil's turning. Like you can see it's been turned, it looks healthy and alive. Then you know that winemaker or that viticulturalist is working really hard to ensure they don't need to spray. They're just trying to do the natural cycle of the vine. Try and look at those people and go, okay, cool. I want to drink wines from that vineyard because it's got less chemicals. in there, right? And you see it as you drive through France. People think that, people who drive through France, oh, the wines are more natural. They are some of the vines you see there, you're like, oh, this is like devastating. Whereas then you go to a biodynamic producer down in Beaujolais, like one of the ones I import, and the soil is so rich and alive, and you're like, yes, I want to drink that, because you are what you eat, you are what you drink. Like, if the soil is where everything starts, I want to drink the healthiest soil, it's wine from the healthiest soil. So yeah, and it makes a huge difference. So that's probably my 2 tips on that. Just go to wine regions, have a look at the soil, see how alive it is, see if there's any moss growing under the vines, which is just scary because it means it's dead as dead can be. And yeah, just drink local as much as you can and look for lighter bottles.
Fantastic. And of course, we'll all be educated on this when we step through the doors of the Blue Door as well. Because it sounds like by
yeah, you'll see only local here, only 100% local.
What's the definition of local, by the way? I need to ask this question.
New South Wales. It's all local. I have 250 wines on the list.
Okay, so the state is like the definition of local. Okay, cool. Because a few years ago, I remember doing some work over in the United States. Okay, that's your definition of local, New South Wales.
For our restaurant, but yeah, Australia is pretty local. So yeah.
Yeah, well, but